Judgment days. No one could tell whether these people opened fire. It is a staged play now. New evidence has appeared about the victims of Zhanaozen massacre. They were shooting from everywhere. It was really scary. The singing lady. Once I heard her singing. She visited us and I visited them, so I made it here and I will be applauding her. Creative and political endeavors of President Nazarbayev's eldest daughter. I don't think she will be supported by the majority of the political elite. Dung talk. How much manure does a cow produce in a year? How does one supposed to calculate this? Yet another tax for the farmers to pay. A cow's flatulence causes more harm to the environment than 177 burning oil wells. Good day, my name is Asylbek Abdulov. You're watching Vlast KZ on KPlus channel. We review highlights, trends and personalities of the week. Mangistau Regional Prosecutor's Office refused to initiate a criminal case against interrogators who tortured the defendants and witnesses on the Zhanaozen events trial. The final paragraph of the prosecutor's ruling says, quote, based on collected materials, upon critical review of testimonies of Kaliyev, Jarılgasınov, Dasmagambetov, Utkilov, Ermukhanov, Askaruli, Jumagaliyev and Murenbayev, who said they were beaten by the police and not examined by the doctors at the hospital, the prosecutor's office concluded that the defendants made this claim to avoid criminal liability and decided not to initiate criminal proceedings. Therefore, the Regional Prosecutor's Office has not considered the testimonies of defendants and witnesses describing torture and abuse during the investigation as persuasive. Here's what the prosecutors chose to ignore.
I was suppressed and humiliated. I couldn't even pray as I was all naked. Thanks to the oil workers, I survived this all. I'm grateful to them for supporting me. I have no idea what I was detained for. I'm a religious person and I was stripped naked and beaten up. Officer Daniel Adilov put a plastic bag over my head and held it until I passed out. When I came back to my sense, I realized I peed myself and they made fun of me and forced to wipe the floor like that. They continued beating, saying I will not get out of here if I didn't admit to looting the ATM. I cried and I begged them to stop and asked why are they doing it to me as I was innocent. Then I was offered to admit myself guilty so that they can charge me with the Article 100. When I refused, they started beating me again. I never got beaten like that by anyone, but here I was beaten with such cruelty by state authorities. I was summoned to the prosecutor's office after several days. I was shown a video in which I was standing next to the sound monitor and trying to put it back, but they say I was participating in the mass disorders. My mom was left outside when they took me in and ordered me to put my hands back on my head and started asking questions like if I was in the mass riots, to which I said no and got punched. Then I was asked another question, which followed by another punch, so it went on and on after each of my answers. I asked my mom to be brought in, but they ignored me and more officers joined in beatings. Tell us, why were you holding sound equipment? When they were thrown down, there were 2 women and 1 man standing on the stage. They told me to help them to put equipment back up. I tried to put one up, but it was heavy and it fell off. The video shows this very moment. In your testimonies, you admit your fault. No, I actually don't admit it. It's all lies. I was beaten by an officer named Maksat. None of either my mom or lawyer was present during the interrogation. There was another officer, Colonel Khydraliyev, who had insulted me verbally.
The order of Mangistau Prosecutor's Office gives grounds to Judge Nagashibayev to rely on all the previous testimonies of the defendants and witnesses in the case of 37 oil workers. It is thus now obvious that the future verdict will be based on the testimonies obtained through torture. On May 1st, the rebellious Zhanaozen held no Labor Day celebrations at all. The sandstorm was raging in town, the people were avoiding journalists, and only children next to the monuments of independence were playing the game of shooting sharks with the riot police rifles. Are you afraid of the shark? No, I'm not. I will kill it with my gun. But where are you going to get your gun? I'll borrow one from Omon Riot Police. Where have you seen the Omon Riot Police? I've seen many of armed Omon Riot Police all over. Many? Yes. The 7-year-old boys in Zhanaozen say they have seen many Omon Riot Police with rifles. Yet only 5 policemen out of all who were shooting at people are on trial in Aktau Regional Court. We cannot show their faces because media representatives were seated in the hall in front of the monitor, which shows only silhouettes of people. Even then, reporters were allowed to record this video for only first few minutes. The decision on the recording ban was made by judges presiding over both Zhanaozen cases of policemen who opened fire at civilians and oilfield workers charged with starting disorders. The ban limits the ability of a few journalists to cover the hearings properly. But Nurlan Kuntuov, the press secretary of the regional Mangistau court, makes sure everyone followed the judge's instructions. Meanwhile, the trial reveals crucial details on Zhanaozen tragic events. On May 2nd, 6 oil workers were brought to the policeman trial. The law enforcement officers made every effort not to let the oil workers be captured on video. In unrest trial, the strikers appear as defendants, and in trial of policemen, they appear to be victims. During the hearing, one of them lost his temper and started shouting. Reporters only managed to record the sound. During the rest break upon the incident, people looked depressed. They say that they're extremely disappointed with the trial progress. Why are they sitting there with no handcuffs on? We are the victims. Then why do they question us as if we were criminals? They are criminals indeed. They aren't under house arrest, therefore they need to be handcuffed, although they are not. Policemen were shooting at people. I'm an oil worker and I've been on the strike for 7 months there. I have a family and 3 children. No one is employed and my mother is retired. I don't know what to do anymore. We'll see what happens next. It's obviously wrong. They charged 5 policemen. No one can prove whether they are the ones shooting people. All this reminds me of a staged play in a theater. The court building has a camera surveillance monitoring people, but those who lost their close ones have nothing left to be afraid of. Only they can speak openly with no fear. Those 5 policemen on trial were killing civilians. They are wearing ties and they are under house arrest. And those who were throwing rocks are now imprisoned. What happened to justice and the government? Rasul Yusupov and his wife Razia Khan have lost their only son during the events of December 16. The bullet got him in the back and went out through his heart. Internal organs were affected according to forensic investigation. I personally identified my boy. He had a perforating wound right through his heart. The death of the 25-year-old Radik was filmed on a mobile phone camera. This video shows Radik Yusupov. His mother has watched this video many times trying to find who is the killer. The one laying on the ground is my son. The one who died first, wearing jeans and black jacket, is my son. You can't tell what was he holding. Here they say that perhaps he was throwing rocks, provoking policemen. But how so? He had nothing in his hands. Moreover, we received a judicial opinion listing names of those who died, saying they are guilty. These dead kids are accused of what has happened. Also, it's said that, should they still be alive, a criminal case would have been initiated against them. It is too stressful of a situation. A conclusion made from their statements implies that they were killing others, then were killed themselves, and then they rose from the dead and looted the stores. Yusupov's family has to return to Zhanaozen after the hearing in the evening. It costs them over $6 per person for a taxi ride. The trial has been ongoing for already a week. It takes more than 2 hours to reach Zhanaozen from Aktau. Only the head of Turganbayev's family attends the hearings in Aktau. Manshuk, his daughter-in-law, and 2 granddaughters stay at home. The 3-year-old Nurjaina likes to go through the parents' wedding album. The girl pointed out her father on photos. The eldest daughter always asks me about her father. I tell her that he's at work and that he'll bring her a yogurt when he comes back home. She still asks about him. Manshuk starts smiling when she talks about her husband. He was a very cheerful person, she says. Manshuk even wrote him a poem.
Бұл фәнидің жалғаны-ай, өткен күндер естелік боп қаладай. 4 жыл бұрын ақ көйлекті кигіздің, басыма фата жаптырдың. Прошлое-то остается в памяти.
The past remains in our memories. 4 years ago, I wore a white dress and a bridal veil just for you. Together we have been through good and bad days. This December claimed many lives. How could anybody do such a thing, shooting people? How could you shoot someone right in the head? Amanbek, Manshuk's husband, was shot in the forehead. The bullet got in here and came out through here. This wasn't a pistol shot or the rifle. Seemed like a sniper shooting from the top. On December 16, Amanbek's parents and his uncle went to take the body from the hospital. The Oman Riot Police was holding them off the hospital, and they managed to take Amanbek's body only several days later, because at first they weren't allowed to, they say. The hospital floors were covered in blood. Amanbek's family mourns not only over their son, but over all the victims of December 2011 events. And that's what makes them different from many others who are still alive. Judge Guljamal Adil Sultani keeps avoiding journalists. The oil is still being exported by barrels. And those who live on a desolate gas station are still living on a street. In Mangistau Regional Court, the trial on the murder of 18-year-old Jansaule Karabalaeva, the daughter of one of the striking oil workers, came to an end. Beknia Sabishev and Bakhidjan Jaketov were found guilty and sentenced to 18 and 16 years in prison, respectively. Jansaule Karabalaeva went missing in late August of 2011. A few days later, she was found dead on the outskirts of Zhanaozen. In early August, Jaksilik Turbayev, the activist of Striking Oil Workers Union, was killed. These two murders served as a warning to the disobedient, yet this hasn't affected the strike. Tragic epilogue occurred 4 months later at the Zhanaozen city square, but the first blood was shed in August, when Jansaule and Jaksilik were killed. December massacre had a tremendous impact on the future of the country. Enterprise employees of Otrao and Kazakhmys Corporation expressed protest moods. Zheskazgan will not repeat the Zhanaozen scenario, announced the leadership of the copper giant at a special press conference in Almaty, and even more so, promised to raise wages for its employees. At the same time, the Kazakhmys administration mentioned some kind of provocations and sabotage, which supposedly may occur within the enterprises. Such turn of events conveniently falls under the conspiracy theory of the president's advisor, Yurtuzbayev, who actively continues his witch hunt in the media. Caused by Zhanaozen ripple effect, the Samru Kazanov Foundation decided to implement peaceful resolution of the labor disputes in a timely manner through dialogue, even with the help of professional negotiators. Moreover, Zhanaozen events triggered a number of dissenters rallies in different cities of Kazakhstan. Some activists have already been arrested for 15 days for the second time, and the rest are paying fines. In social networks, they are currently more popular than a regular opposition, which lacks the integrity after the December events. Next on Vlast KZ. The singing lady. Once I heard her singing. She visited us and I visited them, so I made it here and I will be applauding her. Creative and political endeavors of President Nazarbayev's eldest daughter. I don't think she will be supported by the majority of the political elite. Dung talk. How much manure does a cow produce in a year? How does one supposed to calculate this? Yet another tax for the farmers to pay. A cow's flatulence causes more harm to the environment than 177 burning oil wells. We'll discuss this in a few minutes on Vlast KZ right after the short break.
Главные события в Казахстане. Достоверные факты. Эксклюзивные комментарии. Читайте в Казахстане информационно-аналитический портал «Республика». Чтобы обойти блокировки, воспользуйтесь доменом respublicas.info. Вы окажетесь на так называемом прокси-портале. Специально разработанные канадскими специалистами по интернет-технологиям, прокси-порталы помогают пользователям получать информацию в тех странах, где блокируют интернет-ресурсы – в Китае, Иране, в Казахстане. Вы принимаете условия использования системы и попадаете на страницу информационно-аналитического портала «Республика». Материалы интернет-портала также доступны пользователям всемирной сети Facebook – facebook.com/respublica.kaz. Если вы хотите поделиться информацией, вам есть что рассказать, звоните в редакцию «Республики». Наши телефоны в Казахстане +7 727 273 92 95, в Москве +7 495 621 87 03.
Новости Казахстана на казахском языке смотрите в 21:00 и далее каждый нечетный час. Новости Казахстана на русском языке в 22:00 и далее каждый четный час. Новости Казахстана на английском языке смотрите в 16:30, 17:30, 18:30 и 19:30 со вторника по субботу. Время Астаны. Изготовление и размещение рекламы на канале KplusTV.
Darigha Nazarbayeva, the daughter of President Nazarbayev, has been in spotlight over the last week. The media now speculates about the political ambitions of the lower chamber MP and the chances to succeed her father. The reason for all the newsbreaking activity is Nazarbayeva's Moscow tour, which included several interviews and a biopic presentation.
Surrounded by many bouquets of flowers, Darigha Nazarbayeva had presented the documentary about herself in one of Moscow's most expensive hotels. Officially, the release of the biopic My Star pursues charity purpose to support children with cancer. The event was attended by Russian celebrities and widely covered by popular TV channels. Where and how did you meet Darigha? It was during a similar occasion. Have you seen her singing before? I once saw her singing in Moscow during a private party. We have met at the Asia Festival in Almaty. Which areas she sings best? This is a tough question. I'm not a great expert in this area, so can't really tell. Were you familiar with Darigha's singing? Unfortunately, not well enough, but I'm going to get acquainted with her artistic abilities starting today. It appears that almost none of the invited guests were familiar with Nazarbayev's talent. However, Darigha admits that she mainly sings for family and close friends. Do you have a lot of fans in Kazakhstan? Yes, first of all, they are my relatives and close friends. Almaty concert halls are always packed. Tickets for the performance of a Kazakhstan's parliament member who also happened to be a daughter of the country's president are not easy to come by. Only those on the invite list were allowed in the newly reconstructed Bolshoi Theatre Hall. Amongst other guests, some prominent Russian artists such as Yosif Kobzon, Zurab Tsereteli, Palat Bulbulogli and Philip Kirkorov were seen in the first row. She visited us and I visited them, so I came here with pleasure and I will be applauding. Unfortunately, she missed the opportunity to use a stage name, and now the name of the great Nazarbayev makes it difficult for her to develop as a singer, I'm sure of that. Whether or not Darigha's name makes it difficult for her to develop is up for debate. Immediately after reception, Darigha appeared on the Russia 24 news channel giving an interview. I gave so many concerts in the past. Right now I'm working on my vocals. I believe the time has come for me to create new canvas. Interestingly, in one day after Dariga's interview, the same channel aired an interview with the opera star's father, the president of Kazakhstan, Nursultan Nazarbayev. This time it was carefully picked questions followed by reserved answers. Nevertheless, the president touched upon the political situation in the Middle East and the Arab Spring. The first cause for the events is the internal problems. This includes the worsening of people's living standards, poverty, unemployment and desperation. People who endure this can be easily manipulated because they are desperate and ready to listen to slogans and promises. The authorities didn't meet people's expectations. The active father and daughter promotion campaign in Moscow caused a wave of discussions about the launch of the so-called success operation. There are rumors in Astana that Dariga's appearance in Russian media might have a special cause. Dariga Nazarbayeva returned to the political spotlight early this year, listed among the ruling party Nuratan candidates for the elections to the lower chamber of the Kazakhstan's parliament. Despite of all critics and disputes, Dariga still made it to the seat of the fifth convocation and lighted up the usually boring crowd of the parliamentarians with her colorful persona. Dariga appeared in public after almost 4 years of silence related to her ex-husband Rahat Aliyev. She is not a political amateur either, as in the parliamentary elections of 2004, her Azar party won by collecting 11% of all votes. Back then her family name played a significant role in the process. She didn't even seem to hide that her party was just a satellite to the ruling party, Nuratan, and therefore received support at every level. In the 21st century, Kazakhstan has a leader just like France had Charles de Gaulle, USA had George Washington, and China had Deng Xiaoping. In February 2005, Dariga led the MP group IMAG, and the next year her party Azar merged with Nuratan. A year later, the confrontation between her husband and President Nazarbayev had reached its peak. Dariga was dismissed from the party, while Rahat Aliyev was removed from all of his state positions. We'll merge the parties and that's it. I promise that the things will calm down around you immediately. You'll be breathing freely again. You have to talk to Dariga about the party. I cannot decide anything without her. She has political ambitions. I can instruct her within a family, but outside she has her own opinion. But haven't we talked about it, all three of us together already? Well, then this is just between us, man to man. If she doesn't agree with my opinion, I will quietly eliminate the party. Through all regional branches, I will announce that I don't support it. An exiled politician Viktor Khrapunov had stated in his recent interview to KpLus that the initiative on Dariga's return to politics most likely comes from the leader of the nation himself. The ex-mayor recalls that the president's daughter has many times been positioned in the media as a potential Nazarbayev successor. Dariga always assumed the leading position within Dariga and Rahat's family. Anyone who knows Nazarbayev well understands that he will never give away power from the family to someone else, and even the most outstanding of son-in-laws would have never been considered a potential successor. Viktor Khrapunov believes that the father-daughter tandem appeared just in time with Rahat Aliyev's leave. The ex-mayor says that Dariga's promo campaign launched simultaneously with her father's may result in significant change in Kazakhstan's political arena. Khrapunov even names the future post reserved for the president's ambitious daughter. The appearance of Russia's parliament speaker Naryshkin at the event makes me think it's a PR campaign to prepare people for the idea that Dariga may become the speaker of the Kazakh parliament. Journalist and Central Asia expert Arkady Dubnov believes that Nursultan Nazarbayev is both physically and morally exhausted. Quite possibly he is trying to appoint close associates to key positions in order to launch a successor mechanism. Certain consolidation of the nation is going on around the Zhanozan events, where there is no place left for Nazarbayev, so in the situation he simply must find ways to find successors to secure financial resources and his family's safety. He is like Shakespeare's King Lear, so deeply disappointed by the betrayal of his elder son-in-law and the numerous stories linked with the middle one. Since neither the youngest nor the middle daughters can claim the clan's interests, only Dariga remains the main candidate for keeping the power within family. There is little time left, says political expert Dostum Satbayev, and the successor issue remains very pressing. However, different scenarios are being considered, and Darigay is not really the strongest candidate to take over the presidency from Nazarbayev. Darigay is a very smart person. She even possesses some political vision and experience. However, I wouldn't say she can get support from the major part of the political elite. She might, though, be supported by people who prefer easy transition, and there are many people who want these changes in Kazakhstan today, including the elite. It's clear now that the silence ban on president's family members' participation in the political life has been taken off, says the political expert. And Darigay Nazarbayeva will have to finally make a choice of whether she is an opera singer, a businesswoman, or a politician after all.
In conclusion of the program, we have a story of rural living in Kazakhstan. See what makes lives of farmers miserable, what prevents them from prospering, and finally feeling themselves the owners of their own land. With all the current problems of farmers, there is now an extra one to deal with: the new taxes.
Everyone is rushing in Aral farm. Even though the spring has just settled, people here are already preparing for the winter. Farmers joke about Kazakhstan's natural gas passing them by on their way to other countries, while only wealthy villages may afford to buy coal. For these people, the pressed animal dungs are the only reliable energy source.
If it hadn't been for Cotton Eye Joe, I'd been married a long time ago. Where did you come from? Where did you go? Where did you come from, Cotton Eye Joe? If it hadn't been for Cotton Eye Joe, I'd been married a long time ago. Where did you come from? Where did you go? Where did you come from, Cotton Eye Joe? If it hadn't been for Cotton Eye Joe, I'd been married a long time ago. Where did you come from? Where did you go? Where did you come from, Cotton Eye Joe?
This is a pressed sheep dung we are collecting as a fuel for winter. It will lay here for a couple of days and then we will dry them out on the sun. Then we'll store it in the barn. We don't have cattle and horse feces here as they spend the summer in pastures. Domestic animal manure, which has always been used as fuel and fertilizer in villages, now considered as dangerous for the environment. The new environmental code of Kazakhstan now taxes farmers to pay for it. Income, environment, social, land. Southbek Baykenov is confused with the amount of taxes he has to pay. It took him 10 years of hard work to establish his currently successful farm, which sells about 300 sheep and 3 cattle a year to slaughterhouses. And all that time, the state never facilitated his business, instead created only obstacles. Instead of inventing new taxes, they should have assisted us. We supply the city with milk, meat and wool. Farmers are struggling for survival and then they adopt a tax on manure. I guess the Environment Ministry has nothing else to do. This is outrageous. In the meantime, the environment authorities state that the tax will not burden farmers at all, as its annual rate is as low as 10 cents per ton. However, local councils are authorized to raise the rates. In Almaty region, for instance, the annual tax rate already makes up 20 cents. An average cow produces about 4 tons of manure a year. That the tax it will be subjected to may not be that high, just 81 cents a year. However, for 100 cows, a farmer in Almaty region will have to pay about $81. Shepherd Jangeldi is confused with these calculations. He cannot understand how the authorities are going to count all the manures. For instance, there are 100 animals in his herd, and there are many herds like his in this pasture. Counting the amount of manure in the endless steps looks like a joke, says Jangeldi. How much manure does one cow produce a year? How to calculate this? Also, cattle is always on the pasture and thus only enrich the soil in the steppes. It's just funny. Will they follow after each animal? Mel Seleucizov is one of the bill authors. The tax is crucial for saving nearly all the humanity, says the environmentalist. He shows a serious concern about the global warming and the climate change affected by methane release from manure. Experts said that if the global temperature will rise by just 2 degrees Celsius, the world will be engulfed with disasters. Methane is 20 times more hazardous than a carbon gas, both of which are greenhouse gases. When manure starts smoldering, it produces methane. I believe we made the right decision. Musagali Duambekov agrees with his colleague, adding that methane-rich gas is produced as a result of manure moldering. However, Duambekov speaks against the introduction of taxes, arguing that the planet has already too many pollution sources even without manure. Thus, it's not clear why Kazakhstan domestic animals are seen as serious cause to the problem. We burn 1 billion cubic meters of gas, for example, in Kumkol 177 wells burn gas every day. So are we really saying here that because one cow had poop, it brings more harm than those 177 wells? This is absurd. It's just a policy trying to make farmers pay for pooing of each of their cows. In the meantime, huge oil companies, without consent of the government and violating the laws, burn billions of cubic meters of gas and still get away with that. At this and other places I had paddocks, like 6-7 years ago I had 53 cows, a horse and shepherds. Well, it's all gone because of the expensive nurture and lack of pastures. Pyotr is an experienced farmer. He sadly recalls the times when he was running quite a wealthy farm. Aside the cattle, he also had poultry farm with more than 1,000 chicken, goose and turkey. He incurred big losses in his business and now keeps only pigs and produces about 10 tons of pork a year. We talk about the increase of animal products, but at the same time we are actually harming the industry, because the more we have animal products, the more we produce the manure. They shouldn't tax it. It's necessary to come up with the reprocessing systems. In China they produce biogas, and it's both fertilizer and energy at the same time if used properly. Kazakhstan Farmers Union had appealed to the Environment Minister for explanations regarding the newly introduced. Auyes Khandarinov says that following the logic of the environmental officials, if the manure is indeed dangerous for environment, then why the state doesn't pay the compensation for farmers who have to breathe that harmful air? Obviously, the state really needs money nowadays. They want to fill the budget, so they instruct the tax agents and the latter start taxing us. So, thinking logically, what's next? Are we going to be taxed for going to the bathroom too, or maybe for breathing air? According to the Soil Management Department, about 87% of agricultural equipment in Kazakhstan are outdated. Combined harvester and tractor fleets haven't been renewed for more than 20 years already. Sarikbolsun Abdildin remembers the golden times when the country provided 100 million people with grain and exported more than 400,000 tons of meat. He believes Kazakhstan farmers may be saved only through facilitation of taxation and agriculture reforms. The state of the agriculture industry depended on the politics of one single person. The great potential of the agriculture was destroyed and eliminated with one signature of President Nazarbayev, who decided to get rid of collective farms and distributed cattle to all. People having no other income sources would trade cattle for electricity and would even trade a whole ship for just 5 pieces of soap. While some officials are solving the problems with animal manure, Zhenozhena authorities are struggling with the people's excrement. About 90% of all treatment facilities do not work here for already a long time. The workers of the utility enterprise Ozen Invest sort the excrement of the entire city manually. It's impossible to work in here anymore. The pumps are not functioning, the water and excrement are leaking from all over. The equipment is barely working. If you touch it, it may collapse. I have no idea what to do, whom to refer. I'm ready to give up anything just to make this treatment facility work properly. Ozen Invest employees complain that instead of introducing manure taxes, the state must have paid them bonuses for working in harmful environment. The company loses a lot of its workers, as not many people are ready to operate at a salary of $405 a month in these conditions. Local utility employees say that about $13.5 million were allocated for the reconstruction of their strategic facility. However, the treatment plants still do not work, as the budget money disappeared without a trace. No one cares about us. We went to the newly appointed head of the regional administration. He didn't even meet with us, sending his deputy instead. First, we were happy and invited him to see everything with his own eyes, but he couldn't even set a step inside because of the smell. We had to block his car, so he couldn't leave like that, but he still escaped us on foot. Whom else should we appeal to?
Thank you for watching Vlast KZ on KPLUS channel. Highlights, trends and personalities of the week. Goodbye.
Всего вам доброго и до новых встреч.